trained. Listen. Mark and Tommy have done the job, but I may be the spokesman for TCU women's basketball because I believe in these guys and I know what they can do. If they beat South Carolina, they're going to be 10-1 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. So I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams. So that he likes this guy, Brown, so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
What's up, everyone? This is Pro Football Today here on SportsGrid, and for the next more than 60 minutes, we are coming your way with some hard-hitting thoughts, deep dives, insights, analysis into what is surely going to be the best game of Week 16. Right? We all agree on? No, probably not, but we're going to talk about the Broncos and Chargers anyway. Adam Kaufman, Tom Vecchio, Dave Sharapan, the Sportsbook King. Fellas, how we doing?
Boy, I'm great.
Good.
Go ahead, Tom. You go first. I'll go second. Go.
No, you always go first. We can't break tradition now. Week 16.
We've broken many traditions already on the show in the last couple weeks, but that's fine. I will go first. I'm in holiday mode, boys. I got the holiday hat on, ready to go. This thing lights up. I don't want to get Vinny in trouble because it might change up the shot or something like that. But this one's on you boys tonight. You're going to have to help navigate, find people, bets. This number, I have friends in books that literally said to me in a text, we need the Chargers tonight for body parts. I don't know which parts. I don't know if it's an arm, a leg, a kidney. I don't know. But man, oh man, fellas, I said, all right, I was gonna wear the Broncos stuff and just get with the crowd. But you know, an old wise man once said, if your friends jump off a bridge, would you jump off with them? And I don't know. I don't think so. Thinking with the Chargers gear tonight. Don't change. Don't ever change.
How about you, Tom?
As we discussed on the pre-show as we're getting ready, a football game will happen tonight. That's what we know for certain. What happens in that game, will it be good? That's a whole different story. And there's a lot to get to tonight, not only from a player prop perspective, which I do think looks a little bit thin tonight, but ultimately this is just a very important game for playoff seeding, what these teams are going to be doing over the final few weeks. And I think this is maybe the toughest game that we've done all season. There are so many question marks on both sides of the ball when it comes to offense. We have pretty solid defenses on both sides. I think tonight is all about the Broncos, as Dave said, and it's all about the under. I would be ready for a Thursday night game that ends 20-17. Would that be too much of a stretch for you guys?
I think that's incredibly realistic. No, it feeds into some of what we're going to discuss in terms of trends. I mean, there's one on your screen right now. These two teams, 10-1 to the under over the last 11 that they have played when the Chargers have been the host team. And Sean Payton, of course, he's 14-5 against the spread in same season revenge games. Harbaugh, in his NFL coaching career, going back to the Niners, generally speaking, is someone that does quite well off of losses against the spread. And so you could sort of pick and choose your side if you want. I think what's really notable, we're inside that key number of 3, right? So we're 2.5s across the board at this point in time. Basically, there are some rogue 3s out there, but it's mostly 2.5s across the board, with the Chargers sitting as the favorites. And again, it is a low total. It's come down from an opening number of 43 to now there were 42.5s out there. Now it's 41.5. But again, you can't help but look back to under. It's just the theme, as highlighted by that graphic. But even when these teams matched up back in week 6 of the season, it was a weird game, guys. It was a strange game because it really was just so dominated by LA. 23-16 was the final in Denver, but the Chargers led that game 23-0 before Bo Nix and company got garbage points there, 16 of them in that fourth quarter. Nobody played overwhelmingly well when it comes to the prop market. I mean, Devon Vele was the leading receiver on the Denver side, not Cortland Sutton. It wasn't Ladd McConkey on the Chargers side. It was some dude most people haven't even heard of. The rushing game, nothing special on either side. You don't even have J.K. Dobbins in this one. So when it comes to the spread, and I know, Tom, you are a believer in the Chargers to win this, and clearly Dave is too, based on his outfit. But, how do you navigate, which side is the stronger side?
I'm going with the Broncos just to step over that. I am on the Broncos tonight. Broncos and the under tonight would be the side that I'm on. Okay. I do think that the Broncos are the better team when it comes down to it. We have seen good things from the Chargers, but they've also seen this really low point of inconsistency. And going back to a couple of weeks ago against the Atlanta Falcons, not being able to put up points against the Atlanta Falcons defense is a concerning sign. And I know that was the first game that they didn't have J.K. Dobbins, but you still should be able to get out there with Justin Herbert as your quarterback and put up points in a good environment when they were at the Dome and Atlanta, and they weren't able to do so. They're constantly being held to a lower scoring game, and their offense overall has struggled since J.K. Dobbins has been out, and that is a major concern. And in the fact that Justin Herbert is a little bit banged up, whether it was the game against the Chiefs or last week when they were constantly cutting to the highlights of the Bucs and the Chargers, every time Justin Herbert's getting knocked down, his ankles are getting underneath someone else on the other side of things. Their offense is at a very fragile state right now. Their defense is solid, and so it is on the other side for the Broncos. I think we are in for a slower game, despite the fact that both teams have horrible run offenses. We're actually in for some passing, but it won't lead to a lot of points.
Man, I mean, you want to talk about getting prepared for this game? How do you get prepared for a game after we're coming off of last Thursday? The no touchdown scored in the game cashed. We all had touchdown props. We had all this other stuff. The game finished 12-6, all field goals, and the no touchdown at 200-1 cashed. That one might be worth a flyer tonight. This might be a field goal fest. I mean, if you're thinking under, you look at the guys to score a touchdown. I'm sitting here going through this market right now. Just to score anytime touchdown, there's not even a minus. The books are telling you, hey, good luck. Here's a plus. The number one guy is Ladd McConkey at plus 140. And then Javonte Williams is plus 160. You got Edwards plus 185, plus 165, Sutton plus 170. What? It's just a hodgepodge of stuff. This one feels like, I mean, you're reaching into stocking. You don't know if you're getting coal or you're getting some new underwear or packs of gum. I don't know what you put in stockings anymore for the kids. Now they want gift cards and stuff to get, video game stuff with. How do you pick a guy to score a touchdown tonight? Seriously, how many touchdowns are going to be scored in this game, period, tonight? I think the number's 3, maybe 4 if we get a defensive touchdown or a special teams play.
Tom, what I'll say to that is, I don't think we're going to get a lot of touchdowns, but when it comes to who do you choose, and I do love that, Dave highlighted the fact that we're looking at plus money across the board. I don't want to go near running backs. Doesn't mean a running back won't score a touchdown. I just, again, the unpredictability of even who it's going to be, because there is no dominant rusher on either side for either of these teams. I don't want to go near it. What I will say is this. The Chargers have allowed the 5th most touchdowns in the NFL to wide receivers with 16. So that has me looking at Cortland Sutton there at, what was it, plus 175? I mean, it feels like a pretty good number for what is clearly Bo Nix's number one wide receiver. I know we'll do the wide receiver head-to-head in a little bit here, Tom, but when you're looking at Sutton, he had a down game last year, or last week rather, only about 30 yards, but he was still targeted 9 times. He is averaging, something like 7-8 targets a game. He is consistently someone that Nix looks toward.
Right, and when we did the Monday night game a couple of weeks ago, I said specifically about Cortland Sutton in the passing offense of the Broncos, it's Cortland Sutton and then it's everyone else. So just objectively getting a number one wide receiver, even though it's a lower scoring game at plus 175, I do think is a very viable route. And the same thing can be said about Ladd McConkey. Even though his number's not as high, it is still essentially the same argument.
All right, why don't we talk about the quarterbacks on the other side? Because, again, there's names, I guess. Herbert, Nix. Who's going to be any good in this game, though? Really, I don't know. We're going to break it down.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's Pro Football Today here on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Thanks for hanging out. We got Tom, we got Dave, we got Vinny and Tommy behind the scenes, and Scotty and Billy and Ralphie and Tony and all the other guys that are helping us out. I'm Adam. Hi. All right, let's get into this here. The quarterback comparison, Justin Herbert against Bo Nix. Again, neither one was particularly good when these teams squared off back in Week 6. You had Herbert passed for 237, had a touchdown. Nix, 216, 2 TDs in the air. He was picked off once. 61 rushing yards, however, was the leading rusher in that game on the Denver side. You can see the props here. They're still low. It's 226.5 for Herbert versus 221.5 on the Knicks side. The touchdowns typically 1.5, we understand. And I think the interception market is interesting in this game as well. But Tom, let's start with you in this one. Which QB do you actually have trust in, if either one, when it comes to the passing over?
So when it comes to yards, I would side a little bit more with Bo Nix. I do have props. I do have over props for both quarterbacks. They aren't yards, but if it were to choose between the yards, it would come down to Bo Nix moving the ball, at least at a considerable rate. And I would say the same for Herbert. And a lot of this comes down where I view these offenses as remarkably similar. And their quarterbacks are good. I would say we could say Herbert maybe shades to the side of great. But their run games are terrible. And then when we get to the passing offenses, both teams have very clear number one wide receivers. And then can we go to others? Do we want to go into Stone Smart, who's stepping into tight end role? Do we want to be going to Quinton Johnson? No, the answer is just go to Ladd McConkey. And then for the Broncos side of things, it's just Cortland Sutton. And then do we want to go to Valet or Troy Franklin or someone else? No, let's just go to Cortland Sutton. So in passing offenses, have to shine tonight because the run games are so bad. And, Dave, when you start looking at the running back numbers, as we always like to do in these parts, the top leading rusher is 33 or 34 yards?
It's unbelievable.
So this has to be a passing game. I don't think there will be a ton of points, but if they're going to move the ball at all, it's going to be through the air. How can we trust one of these running backs for 35 yards, 20 yards? Like, what are we talking about tonight?
It's crazy because when you look at it, and I'm looking at the attempts and the completions, and I thought of that Spider-Man meme where he's doing this and the other guy's doing this, because they're both the same exact number for attempts is 32.5 and the completions is 21.5. They're the same number for both guys. 16 weeks we've been doing the show. It's never been the case. And that's one where you got to check in the room with the other odds makers and be like, hey, man, did one of you mess up and put the same number in for both guys? This can't be. So, I mean, Adam, you asked Tom, which one do you trust more as far as the quarterbacks? I don't know if I trust either one more, but I think the obvious answer, and this is in Adam's wheelhouse, where you always look at a running back to catch yards, to do the other thing that he does on his position. This Bo Nix rushing yards prop, doesn't this have to be a play tonight? Has to be a play, Adam, no?
Normally, I would agree with you. The thing is, when you look at Bo Nix's game log, and again, I mentioned the 61 rushing yards when these teams played way back in week 16. That was October. It was a long time ago. Nix of late, okay, he had 23 rushing yards last week in the game against the Colts. That was by far his most in recent games. Games before that, 4 against the Browns, 5 against the Raiders, 5 against the Falcons, -5 against the Chiefs. Before that, he did have a 36 in Baltimore. That was back in early November, and 4 in the game before that. All of that is to say, Dave, he was running a lot in the first half of the season, totals of 35, 25, 47, 61, 75. But of late, he's using his arm, not his legs. So I'd like to agree with you, but the recent play calling doesn't back it up.
Right. I want to make an argument for I want to make an argument for
boys. Go ahead.
Quarterbacks. And let's start with Herbert over 20.5 completions, because like I said, I think the yards are fine, but I like these specific markets. So Herbert over 20.5 completions. Over the last 3 weeks, we got to remember, the Chargers do not have J.K. Dobbins anymore. That means it's Gus Edwards and Kamani Vidal. Over the last 3 weeks, Gus Edwards, 6 carries, 32 yards, 10 for 36, 8 for 20, 8 for 23. Kamani Vidal, 4 for 20, 8 for 34, 3 for 9. They cannot run the ball on the ground. The Broncos, they're allowing the 5th fewest rushing yards per game at 98.6. Over the last 3 weeks, the Chargers' pass play percentage has gone from 55% to 65%. So they are throwing the ball. Combined with the fact that Herbert has a bad ankle, the Broncos lead the league in sacks with 49. They're also in the top 10 in the league in all categories of QB pressures per dropback, QB knockdowns, heart rate, et cetera, et cetera. Herbert has to get the ball out quickly. The yards are the issue. So I'm more confident in the completions because he will have to move the ball out quickly. The yards are a different story.
Wow.
What's the number again?
20.5 for Herbert.
Yeah.
Which is
so I mean, it's a number he's only cleared 5 times all season.
But we can't look at some of the early times when they had J.K. Dobbins when he's running for 70, 80, 90, 100 yards. This is a 65 pass play percentage over the last 3 weeks is a 10% increase from where they were in those the games that J.K. Dobbins has been out. So we have to start looking at this new sample size.
The under just went to minus 120. So whether the guys in the risk room somewhere watching the show or whatever, they literally just moved the juice to the under on Herbert's completions. So real quick, we'll wrap up the quarterback.
They're watching.
Do you think the completions or the attempts, Tom, is a better bet there?
I mean, it's kind of like salt to taste. You could pick either one. It also depends on how much you think each team's going to be moving the ball up and down the field. Where I have a little more faith in the Broncos and their offense to move the ball. That's why I like Nick's over 33.5 attempts, and I like Herbert on the completion side of things. So it's different for each quarterback.
Here's how I would distinguish it, though, Dave. I think it's a little bit of that tell yourself a story about the game. If you believe the Chargers are going to win, then I would say the Herbert completions are the better play. If you believe the Broncos are going to win like Tom does, I would rather go with the Herbert attempts, believing that he is going to be throwing more and more and more, obviously, and trying to bring him in. So I think there are a lot of different ways to play this. We're going to continue talking about the QBs because you know what? I got a feeling they may make an appearance in the same game parlays. We'll do those when we come back.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A barn burner on the way in Thursday Night Football. Chargers at SoFi playing host to the Broncos. We have already talked a lot about the quarterbacks. We'll do more with the wide receivers, the running backs, maybe even the tight ends. Not quite as compelling here in this game. But first, same game parlays. Let's get into it. Tom, start us off. What do you have for your SGP?
Yeah, today's Thursday, so I start. We'll start off by saying on Monday, your SGP hit. So congratulations are in order. But yeah, let's get to mine. Really tough. Normally I like to add in, a touchdown prop. Obviously gives it some nice juice. But it's a tough game, as I mentioned at the top. So Denver plus 3.5. The line was plus 3. Has moved down to 2.5, which is why you can't get exactly 3. So I'll take the 3.5. Hopefully cover that number. Under 42.5. Again, the number has already moved from 42 down to 41.5. I'll take that extra number. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game, and because of how bad the Broncos are at running the ball, it's not going to be Audric Estime, Javonte Williams. We are getting absolutely zero production out of these backs. We know that Jaleel McLaughlin is out tonight. We're getting no production, and as Adam alluded to, there are games where Bo Nix is leading the team in rushing. That means, again, time and time again, also for the Broncos, not only has the Chargers pass play increased, we also see the Broncos, their pass play percentage has gone up to nearly 60% over the last 3 games because Bo Nix has to pass the ball because no one's doing anything on the ground. And I'm just going to take Bo Nix at 200 plus passing yards. It obviously is at minus 220. We roll this all together. Broncos come away with the win, or they cover. Lower scoring game, and they move the ball through the air. It's only plus 350, but I think this is a very viable SGP for what I'm expecting tonight.
All right, it is my turn. Let's get into it. Like you said, I did win last time out. It was a nice feeling. It was a good feeling, but let's see if we can repeat it while getting a little bit greedy, admittedly. Let's flash it. It's an SGP at nearly 6-1 on FanDuel, plus 597 on this same game parlay. Now listen, I know it's a little crazy sounding. It is. Justin Herbert, we're going under 235.5 pass yards. Herbert, Tom mentioned it. He's got the high ankle sprain. That loss to the Buccaneers last week could be hobbled. Might not look right. Vance Joseph's pass defense is one of the highest rates of man coverage in the entire league. Herbert, 29th in completion percentage against man coverage. That is below 50%. And a passer rating, again, man coverage, of 85 as opposed to 112 versus zone. It is not even close. He has trouble with man coverage. That, coupled with the considerable pressure he is going to face. Obviously, he has been sacked dozens of times this year. The Broncos, sack monsters. So this is going to be a troubling setup for Herbert. And oh, by the way, 4 out of his last 5, in fact, 5 out of his last 6 games, he has come under this number. In fact, he has gone under in 4 straight with an average of 193 passing yards. That's about 40 below the prop that we are talking about. Ladd McConkey, I'm in agreement with Tom, going over 65.5 receiving yards for Ladd, because if Surtain is draped all over Quentin Johnston, who's he going to go to? Obviously, his number 1 receiver, Herbert, is going to look toward McConkey. Now, he averages 7 targets, 67 receiving yards per game here as a rookie, which, by the way, that's 67. That's more than the prop, boys. It's more than the prop. He's going to get usage. He's going to get volume here in this game. And plus, QB under, receiver over. You got just a little bit of negative correlation right there, which I like as well. And then I'm going to go with the game under. We mentioned one trend. How about a little bit more? I mean, you really dive into this thing. Again, these teams matched up in week 6. How many points did we get? 39. We're going under 41.5. Chargers have gone under in 15 of their last 19 divisional home games. The Broncos have gone under in 16 of their last 21 divisional road games. Chargers in general, their games have gone under in 11 of their last 16, and we mentioned it earlier. Head-to-head, 10 out of the last 11 at the host of the Chargers, not necessarily in LA, but when the Chargers have been the home team, going under 10 of those 11. So again, these all seem very reasonable to me, and they're all individually in the vicinity of minus 110. You put them all together, you're getting 6-1 on FanDuel. So that, Dave, my SGP. Let's see if we can make it 2 in a row.
I mean, my listening glasses were on, and I heard it all. But as a book guy, I'm going to make it simple. I won't even need to go into the next segment. Adam, you hit your parlay on Monday. You ain't hitting it 2 days in a row. I'm taking Vecchios. That's it. Easy, done, finished. Crooked. Oh, man.
The amount of... What's your Venmo again? Hang on. Good God.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
All right, we are back here. PFT Pro Football Today. Dave, Tom, Adam, and we just gave you our same game parlays. Dave, you're sure? You gave it to us in the last 30 seconds or so of the segment. Tom's the winner of the segment. Have you checked your phone?
I'm checking. I'm checking it now. Hold on. No.
Have you checked your Cash App?
I have not. No. But listen, you went with individuals. You went with the right guy. I think McConkey gets it, but why is that number higher than his average? That's usually one of those indicators that either the books are getting a lot of money on that.
It's below his average.
I thought you said it was his number was 69 and his average was 67.
His average is 67. The number is 64.5.
Oh, I thought you said 69.5. Okay, well, I think that one is going to be the
change your opinion.
It does a little bit because I thought the guys moved the number up. And I think it's for a lack of a better choice, boys. Like, I'm looking at this going, I don't know what the Chargers are going to do. I respect Denver's defense. I think they're going to be a problem for whoever they play in the playoffs. They have been kind of playing playoff games for the past month. And tonight is going to determine – Denver's still got a shot to get the 5 seed. So the Chargers got to win a game to get in the playoffs. This is going to be a high-intensity game. I'm leaning under. So when I see less individual props, I sided with Tom. But, I did it on Monday. And, Adam, you did hit the prop. You did hit the same game parlay on Monday. You had it all the way. We had to wait until late. And then, boom, we got the text. And we were communicating on Twitter. That was great. I was very happy for you.
Listen, it's what have you done for me lately? I get it.
It is. That's what this business is. It is.
Yes.
Right.
It is. So, that in mind, Tom, and Dave alluded to this before. If we're thinking, and we're all in agreement on this, we're thinking under. Is the move ultimately is one of the quote unquote best bets, and you can bet this in different ways, obviously, depending on the book that you shop at, but should we be, because we rarely talk about these guys, should we be investing in the kickers? You have Will Lutz and Dicker the kicker, the big Chargers, don't be a you-know-what campaign with Cameron Dicker. Should we be playing these guys for either their kicking points or multiple field goals made or whatever it is. If we just think that even if these teams are moving the chains, they're going to stall out in the red zone, we're going to get points that way because there just won't be many touchdowns.
I think that's the rational way to go about it. Like, we are talking about the touchdown. We're like, who's going to score? We're not sure who's going to score. You're just basically taking a shot on who's going to get into the end zone. We're not sure if they're going to get into the end zone. There's going to be no running game. So, yes, if we are expecting the offenses to be stalled at a certain point, and again, we all are in agreement on the defenses being solid, especially from the Denver side of things, kicking may have to be the way to go tonight. And I hate to say that because I just don't want to talk about kickers ever, but that really may be the best way to go about it, where we can still hit the under, a team can still cover, you're getting some exposure in the market. I think that may be, it's not fun, but it's probably the most rational way to go about it.
I don't know. If you don't like talking about the kickers, and you guys are both still heavily into the fantasy stuff, so I don't blame you. Talking about kickers, sometimes it's not really ever fun, but sometimes those props are lower priced. I think these ones are right on the money, though, with the 6.5 for Lutz and 7.5 for Dicker, which, again, that's just fun to say, Dicker the kicker. I'll say it again just in case you missed it the first time. What about the interception prop, boys? If you don't want to talk about the kickers.
Yeah.
Herbert has every game, him to throw an interception has hit except last week, right? It was on a streak where it was a bargain basement price. The no was plus money. It was like even money or plus 105, and it finally got to the favorite. I don't think he throws a pick tonight. He's been very careful with the ball.
Well, he's only thrown 2 interceptions all year.
All season. And they were early in the season. Right. So he's not throwing a pick.
One was
that
last
seems
week.
like a
He had
bargain.
one last
Right.
week.
Right. Last week ended the streak. It was week 1 or week 2, and then it was all these weeks, and then last week he threw it. I don't think he throws one tonight. You only have to lay 140 to say no. But the Knicks one, did you see that price? Knicks is throwing a pick tonight according to this price. This is almost Will Levis like the Bo Nix to throw a pick price. Surprised by that.
It is. I definitely wouldn't go to Herbert just because, again, like you said, he's been so safe with the ball. The Bo Nix one, again, it's also, as Adam said, what story are you telling yourself? If the Chargers do score, and again, Broncos can't run the ball, we've already established it, Bo Nix is going to have to throw the ball, and because he's kind of been a little bit shaky in recent games, that does make sense. If we can touch on the kicker props again, not that I want to, but Cameron Dicker over 1.5 field goals is minus 215, and Will Lutz over 1.5 is minus 165. These are field goals, not kicker points.
Oh, okay. You like the field goals instead of the points.
Well, the points is you have to get more. The field goals we can get 2, and he would still hit the under on 6.5 points.
True.
Theoretically, if we get a repeat of last week.
Right. We can't get a repeat of last week, boys. Adam, we cannot get a repeat of last week, can we? Please? No.
I really hope not. I mean, please give us something compelling to watch, because these are, Dave, you mentioned it before. These are two teams that, look, we may see them both in the postseason, and we probably will. As of right now, they are the 6-7 teams in the AFC with, there's a grouping of 6 and 8 teams behind them, but they're 2 games off the pace with 3 games left in the regular season. It's unlikely. It's an uphill battle, So I think that we're just talking about jockeying for seeding, and that these are teams we better get used to watching for the next little bit. I just hope that they're able to do something together. We talked about McConkey. We've talked about Sutton. Let's talk more about them and some of the other alternative options. Not that any of them gets you super excited. Let's do the wide receiver breakdown right here, guys. And I think that ultimately, Tom, we know the number ones. You're looking at them on your screen if you're watching across SportsGrid TV. If you're on the radio, channel 159, Sirius XM satellite radio, again, McConkey, Sutton. These are the dudes. These should be the dudes. But I'll repeat. Neither one was the leading receiver when these teams matched up back in week 6. Vele and, like I said, some dude you've never even heard of on the Chargers side. So do we think secondary guys make an impact here in this game?
They can. I would say at a certain point, if they're making an impact, are we expecting then Sutton and or McConkey to make an impact? And then That means would Herbert be flying over his yardage prop? Would Bo Nix be flying over his yardage prop? Like that's like the secondary conversation that we certainly need to have. I know a lot of people are just going to be high on Quentin Johnson or Josh Palmer just because of the talent that they have. They've been remarkably inconsistent this year. I think we'd all agree on that, but they do have plenty of physical talent out there. Then we look to Troy Franklin, as you see on the screen now, over 18.5 yards. Again, this is something that he doesn't need to have 9 targets to get this. He can do this in 1 or 2 catches. So there is some value that outside of the top players, the rest of their receiving cores are very, very big question marks, where it could be Marvin Mims, it could be Troy Franklin, it could be Bailey. Like 1 or 2 of those guys may go over, but we've had this discussion before about, I forget which running backs we were talking about a couple weeks ago, Adam, but you said if you just bet the over on 3 of them, if 2 of them hit, you're still profitable. I think it's kind of the same situation tonight where, again, these offenses are the same. They can't run the ball. They have clear number 1 wide receivers. And then after that, good luck. But if you're right about that 1 or 2 players, you're going to be very right tonight.
If you're looking off the number ones,
ugly names.
all right, you go. No, these are great names. What are you talking about? For the Chargers, it's Quentin Johnson, someone named Stone Smart with 2 T's.
Backup tight ends.
Awesome. Joshua Palmer and Kimani Vidal.
I mean, backup running back.
That's amazing. And then you have Devon Vele, Marvin Mims Jr., Troy Franklin, Javonte Williams. They're all 26.5 or below. You pick it. I'm the book guy. You can pick whoever you want. That's impossible.
But if you're right about that 1 player and he's at 26.5, and he gets to 40, you could be at some really nice plus money.
I want to meet the person that inevitably has the parlay going over on Palmer, over on Bailey, under on Mims. Cash it.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Funny, I'm betting the Chargers in this game, but I do believe the Broncos are the right side.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have?
I can't really explain it.
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years.
But it's how I feel.
A lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just
the Herbert
injury
injury scares me.
Kind of worked out. Just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest, and we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Right. Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
No, I don't ever look at those. Okay, because we are contractually obligated to do so, we are going to talk about the running backs in this Chargers and Broncos game. I don't know how we're going to do it, Dave and Tom, but we're going to find a way. There they are. Gus Edwards, Javonte Williams. Where is J.K. Dobbins when you need it? Williams shouldn't be this unpredictable or this bad. He just shouldn't. He should be more reliable. We don't even have Jaleel McLaughlin available, which does open the door to who is the pass-catching back on the Denver side going to be, and what does the usage look like there. But again, Dave was reciting all the different prop lines for the wide receivers. Not a whole hell of a lot different among the running backs when you have Edwards, Vidal, Herbert, Nix, the two quarterbacks, Williams, Estime. You can get all these guys basically for sub 30 yards. A couple outliers in Williams and Edwards, the guys that I mentioned off the top, but even they are sub 40. So there is no predominant expected reliable rusher in this game, Tom.
There's absolutely nothing. As you said, this has been kind of the script for this game. Neither team can run the ball. They're dealing with split backfields. The Chargers are obviously missing J.K. Dobbins, like you said. Javonte Williams, while I was super high on him months ago when they played the Saints for that game, and I said he was going for 100 plus, that's not where I am with him today. I actually like Javonte Williams under 10.5 rushing attempts because it's a split backfield, because Audric Estime is seeing X amount of carries, because Bo Nix, he may not be running at a super high rate as he was earlier in the season, but he still can move the ball. And ultimately, the Chargers defense is good. The Broncos defense is very good, especially against the run. I have no exposure to any running backs outside of Javonte Williams under 10.5 attempts. No yardage props, nothing in builders. It is about Nix. It is about Herbert, Sutton, and McConkey, and that is it. This game is extremely centered around these few players, and it is a mess elsewhere.
I'm looking at this going, and it's funny because we've done the show together enough all season where we're kind of maybe know where you're going or what you're thinking, and you're talking about it. Javonte Williams is the only guy with double-digit attempts rushing, and I thought that's got to be an under, and then literally it came out of your mouth. But look at the Charger ones. I mean, Edwards is 9.5 overs minus 140 right now on his rush attempts, which, again, if he gets that, then the Chargers are going to be in this game. Like they're going to be running the ball and kind of controlling it for multiple first downs, extending drives. But Vidal is minus 108 to the under 7.5. I was thinking unders while you said it, and you got me on like that's under for Williams for Denver and under for Vidal for the Chargers. Adam, I know you're not always a big fan of the unders, but did we convince you on some running back unders?
I just don't think I want to play them. I don't want to play their overs. I don't want to play their unders. I don't want to throw my money at such an unpredictable situation. You know what I mean? Like, I think that the logic that I firmly agree with, and as you mentioned, I've brought it up before in past shows, of all right, these are a handful of receivers. They're not all going to go over, but they're all in the conversation. Let's just bet them all and hope we get, 3 out of 5 and we profit or whatever. I don't want to do that with the running backs. I have no idea what this is going to look like. I don't know how they are going to get deployed. I think the fact that we're talking about a short week with games on a Thursday, makes it even more unpredictable. Generally, that does skew toward a backup getting more opportunity, obviously, but who's the backup? I mean, it should be Vidal. It should be Estime, but is it? I mean, I don't know. So I just think like this, honestly, if you could give me the bat line into the coach's office and they could tell me who the starter is going to be, and I'm still not sure I would trust the production. So, yeah, there are so many other ways to invest in this game if you're compelled to do so, that I would just entirely stay out of the running back room, guys.
Yeah, there's not much to like. Like we're not dealing with a lot of great options. The options have been inefficient or ineffective. They're not seeing a consistent amount of carries. Javonte Williams has 28 carries total over the last 5 games. Granted, his role has changed. Other running backs are getting involved, but if you're betting running backs, good luck tonight. Like it is very, very tough, and that's just the reality of the situation.
What do you guys think?
Dave, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, which half do we have more scoring in?
Second.
Yeah, that was my gut.
So that's exact. So I'm thinking this through while we're talking and we're looking at different things. The number's exactly the same. The first half total is 20.5. The second half total is 20.5. And the odds makers, I think they're all on holiday break. I mean, they made the quarterback numbers the exact same. They made the first half total the same as the second half total. The juice is all the same. I don't know. That feels like the second half should be the first half. I'd rather be, 17.5. That's probably a little better number for me, and make the second half 23.5, and we still get to the total 41. But that's just me. I just wanted to see what you guys first thought. But Adam, what were you going to ask? Because we got 2 minutes before we got to take a break here.
Yeah, I was going to start, because I don't think it'll be a long conversation. I was going to start the tight end conversation. Should we invest in Stone Smart?
No.
A guy that most people probably hadn't heard of until a couple weeks ago. Listen, in the last 2 games, 3 for 3 for 54 yards and 5 for 6 for 50 yards.
Whoa.
Clearly, he has been reliable. I know, 8 for 9 for 104 yards over the last 2 games. Is he worth a play tonight, Dave?
It does, depending on what you believe, because if you think Ladd McConkey's option A, and we're talking about Pat Surtain being all over Quentin Johnston, someone else is going to have to catch the ball. So it could be Stone Smart, who, again, a lot of people may not know he is the backup to Will Dissly, who's out. If you think that Surtain's going to be all over Quentin Johnston, then it's either going to be Stone Smart or maybe Joshua Palmer. So tell yourself the narrative.
Right, but from what you're saying right now, I mean, the lack of options is unbelievable. We've done this show. I can't believe the lack of options at different positions. It has to be Smart. Now, if you take the second half, if they're down, they're going to throw. There might be a really good bet on him there.
The dichotomy of would you invest in Stone Smart? No. And then 3 seconds later, it has to be Stone Smart. 30 plus is all you're looking for in the books. That's all you're looking for Stone Smart. I'd rather play him than any of the running backs, I'll tell you that. We'll be back on BF.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Pro Football Today here on SportsGrid, of course, counting you down to the Broncos and the Chargers. Clearly going to be an exciting affair. You could hear it. I can't even convince myself this is going to be a good game, guys. I can't. I couldn't fake it. I am normally excited to, at the very least bet on all of these games, if not, watch it. And of course, I watch them all as well. But this isn't even. And look, I have plenty of things in play. I have placed a number of wagers on this game because, damn it, you gotta have skin in the game, don't you? But I can't say this is one that I am excited to bet on. Like if you're out there and you're like, I don't really, you don't need to go crazy. You don't need to bet in volume with this game. You can easily isolate a couple of plays that you really like, whether again it's, a quarterback's under, or it's, going over on McConkey or Sutton, or playing the under in the game. Like we keep talking about under in this game, Dave, and to the point where the books obviously are reflecting it as we've seen that total drop. Primetime unders have been a thing as well, so that's part of it, but it is, I don't know, sometimes the obvious scares you. Like when everybody's on the same play, it makes you go, should I go somewhere else? Do you hear and see everybody on the under in this game and feel like you need to go the other way?
Sometimes that happens, but not so much tonight because, as we talk it through, and we just did it for an hour, trying to find an individual, somebody that's going to break through and go over all their props. And like Tom says, it's not even that high. Like we only got to get over the barrier of 38.5 rushing yards or 30 passing reception yards. The numbers are all so low that I think this might be, if you're going to make a play or two before, I think you need to be ready to do something in game. This might be one of those games, because if you take a stand on the total pregame under 41.5 and it goes punt, which, by the way, Vecchio, what is the punt parlay pay? You mentioned that one during one of the breaks. That might be the play.
Plus 264 on FanDuel, SGP, both teams' first drives, punt.
So you get punt. This total drops from 41.5 to below at 35. Least 37.5. I was going to say 35.5. You start to get a little leery because now you open up a whole window of numbers to get middle.
Right.
So as you're booking a game, you're like, do I got to drop this thing below 35.5? If you go punt, and then another punt, it will get to 34.5 is where you start to really get like, geez, I don't want to give guys like, if Adam's going to come in with the big bag, or, Vinny's at home watching it and he's ready to unload on it or something. Or, you got like Donnie right side ready to dump in with the limit play, something like that. We don't want that as the book. But I think that's where you got to go, Adam. Like, this is the game you've got to have a plan. This isn't the game, like you call it volume betting. This isn't the game to scatter the board with a bunch of plays.
I have to agree with that. Yeah. Like I have to agree. Like I think live betting just opens up a ton of possibilities. There's boosts out there, there's promos, et cetera, et cetera. So, finding that rhythm, especially for a game like this, and let's just preface it by saying this: like we may not be excited, the total, the player props. This is actually a really, really important game from a real life football perspective. No nonsense game for these teams. Like hugely important from that. Like so, it is actually a high leverage game in terms of viewing. The betting side, we obviously have a skew that we want to see certain things. We don't want to see certain things. So like we want to see yards. We don't want to see 500 passing yards like we did a couple Mondays ago for a Broncos game. But we want to see somewhere in between that. That's maybe not what we're getting. So as Dave said, in-game live, those bettings or the bets that you're making can really be on point. Because if you just take the under on 42, you're under at 39, you're under 37, you have a chance to cash them all. Like I think this game legitimately ends 20-17 or 20-14 in favor of the Broncos, 21-17, something like that.
How does either team win by double digits, Adam?
Excitement.
Is that possible?
Oh, God.
Defensive touchdown. With a defensive mistake.
Broncos, the Broncos lead the league in sacks. Teams. Yeah, Herbert has a banged-up ankle. The Broncos are up by 4 points, and then they have a defensive touchdown. That's how they win by double. They've
got like 14 interceptions or something like that, too, the Broncos. I know we don't believe necessarily that Herbert's going to get picked off, but again, not Superman anymore on the day the new Superman trailer dropped. He had one last week. It could happen again, could happen 2 straight weeks. So, yeah, I think that's how it happens. I don't necessarily see, like, Bengals or Bills like offense out on the field here tonight. All due respect to Herbert, even when he is healthy, or obviously Nick. So yeah, I'd be awfully surprised if one of these teams even gets up 14-0, for instance. I think it's a special teams defensive touchdown that makes that happen if it does. When we come back, we will go back to the
Dave, let me run something by you. So I've had this
Uncle
theory for a couple
Stevie
years,
just walk up the aisle,
and I tried to do like some math on.
I'll get a starting pitcher here. I'll get a closer here. I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill, then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
One last segment here on Pro Football Today before we turn over the reins to keep your preview going and in-game analysis as well of Broncos-Chargers. And for all of the, dumping on this game that we have been doing, that it's going to be a terrible game, it's going to be unwatchable, it's going to hurt the eyes, all that, it does not change the fact that it is important. This is not a pushover game. This is not, a Titans-Giants game. This means something here. And so if you look at the AFC, I know, look. It play better if you don't want the disrespect. Listen, if you look at the standings, you look at the AFC West standings, you got a sandwich going right now. You got the eliminated Raiders at the bottom. You got the, division clinched Chiefs at the top, who in all likelihood are going to win the AFC in general. And the Broncos and Chargers in the middle, separated by 1 game, with Denver at 9-5 and the Chargers sitting at 8-6. And more to the point, when you look at the AFC playoff race, the top 7 teams, those 6-7 squads are the Broncos and the Chargers, although Denver sitting at 9-5, tied with Baltimore. Massively important game on the way this weekend against the Steelers, obviously, for the Ravens as it relates to the AFC North and just this top 7 in general. Right. And then the Colts, the Dolphins, the Bengals, they are not mathematically out. They are lurking at 6-8 with 3 games to go. So even though it's unlikely any of the 3 do make a push, it's not impossible. So that makes this game that much more important, obviously, on the Chargers side of things, a side that a lot of people have been backing. Dave, how do we look at this one with respect to the future?
So when you see that list, to win the AFC, you look at it and you go, okay, there's the NFC. So now we'll get to that in a second. The Chargers price is actually shorter number, odds-wise, than the Broncos, which if you think that the Broncos are going to win this game today, and a lot of you are out there that think the Broncos are going to win this game today, those numbers are going to flip. And the Broncos number gets shorter at 21, and the Chargers number flips because now the Bengals, the way their schedule sets up, can still catch them, get in. If the Chargers got to win a game, now they're very likely to win a game of the three. If it's not tonight, it might be next week. But you take some shots on these futures. Vecchio, I heard you during the break, and we were talking about that and some other things. Is it time to start looking at matching the NFC participant with the AFC participant? Because I was doing that today locally with the college, and we'll get to that in a second. But when you see those NFC future prices to win the NFC, things got pretty interesting this past week with Detroit losing, getting smoked by Buffalo, and the Eagles, I'll have to say it, and this will be the last time I say it, the Eagles went and kicked Pittsburgh's butts. Done talking about that. But look, that was that. I mean, like, there's value on that board, is there not, Tom?
There is. And if we're looking at the AFC odds, now that we're talking through this, like, I don't know if I'm convincing myself in my head, but if you were to tell me the Broncos play a road playoff game at the Texans, I think I like the Broncos in that matchup. And if the Broncos number would plummet from 21 to 1, that number would be in the low teens, maybe not plummet, be in the low teens if they were to win that. So I'm actually convincing myself that maybe I actually need to invest in the Broncos to win the AFC just for the future stake, and you can cash out, hedge out, et cetera, et cetera. But when we're looking at the direct matchups, because of some of the changes that you said that happened over the past weekend with the wins and the losses, I still think the Bills are now shaping up to be the team to beat. And we talked about the number of injuries the Lions have been dealt. I think this has to put them a step behind the Eagles. Regardless of what you think about the coaching on the Eagles and the play calling and all those sorts of things, I think the Lions are taking a step back. They just are dealing with too many injuries at this point. And the team to buy into, maybe the Bucs. We could be buying into them. They would be hosting a home playoff game if they were to win. I don't want to take, necessarily a shot on the Commanders. I think their number is fine where it is. I want to take a longer shot and look for that jump if they do win.
Oh, I think it's very possible. Adam, if it's not the Bills in the AFC, who you said you think the Chiefs? You're just convinced that the Chiefs are going to. When I
said the Chiefs are going to win the AFC, I meant the regular season. So they're going to win the top seed. They're going to get the first round bye. I don't think the Bills are going to catch them for that. I do believe it's the Bills coming out of the AFC and ultimately reaching the Super Bowl. But I've been saying that on this show for weeks. I've been saying Bills, Lions, Bills, Lions, Bills, Lions. That's what I want to see. Now I do worry just a little. That's the thing. I think that at least there was optimism today. We've been hearing for days about how David Montgomery is in all likelihood done for the season. Now you got the report only a couple hours before our show that after talking to like a third expert, then there's optimism that he might be able to return at some point during the postseason. Which obviously they're still elite. They still have an incredible offense. Like, David Montgomery's unavailable. I guess we're just going to have to lean on Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs is unreal, okay? And that offensive line in terms of creating holes is tremendous. So I think the Lions offense is going to be fine. I think Montgomery is a luxury. And I think really he's more of a luxury than if you lost Gibbs, let's say, and still had Montgomery. If you had to pick one that went down, the right one went down. Sorry, David, if you're out there watching. But if he is able to come back, come the NFC title game or that Super Bowl matchup with the Bills or whoever it is, that Lions team becomes that much more interesting. I'm fascinated to see how the NFC regular season finishes because, again, we're looking at Detroit, Philadelphia, and very quietly, despite 6-7 straight wins, very quietly, Minnesota sitting with the same record at 12-2. I'm not a big believer in the Vikings, but I mean, guys, if the Vikings win this weekend and the Lions, plummet, obviously, within that conference, like there's a version where the Lions, drop to, all the way from first to whatever it is, fifth or sixth like snap of your fingers. So it's kind of nutty, where we are right now with just a few weeks left.
The Minnesota price on those futures, fellas, is with them in the spot that they're in right now. You see how fast it can change with the injuries. The Detroit price is priced because it's been there up top, and they've been there all season, and now there's doubt. They're going to beat Chicago this week. If this would be a complete bad luck turn of events, if they go to the Bears and lose this week. But I think the Vikings are going to beat Seattle
They should
this
cover
week.
the number, too.
Right. They should cover the number. Detroit should definitely win and cover this week. After last week, you expect a complete bounce back. But if they're beat up and they're hurt and something else happens, a lot of things change. So now you look at the futures, not just for the teams that are playing tonight. That's why I love this segment so much. You kind of forecast what you think is going to happen, get the price before. When you're right, you got that CLV, baby, and that's what all these pros are after. That CLV, you lock it in. It doesn't mean you get to the window, and it doesn't mean you get the cash. But, Tom, you know how important it is to get the best number, right?
Of course it is. I have a future on the Predators to win the Stanley Cup. I got it 30-1 before they signed Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, and then the number plummeted to about 20-1 the day that they were signed, and now that bet is beyond dead. So yes, getting the best number is a great feeling, but it actually has to come through at the end of the day. So we take shots, like you said. These are long, these are futures, right? So they're low unit plays, they're quarter unit plays, however people do it out there. 1% plays of your bankroll. We have to understand what these long shots are, but it is great to have that CLV. You were there before the line moved. That's what we're after. That's just part of the adrenaline rush. But yeah, taking these shots, especially now, we also have to start talking about once Super Bowl MVP odds are posted.
Oh,
that's also a great
boy.
future conversation
Here we go.
to have.
We're going to leave that one for Adam. Have that, Adam.
Josh Allen going 2 for 2. So again, Broncos Chargers on the way at SoFi tonight. Should be interesting. Should be low scoring. Should be I don't know what it should be. It should be under. It should be under. It should be a Chargers win to create that much more distance. Our thanks obviously to Vinny, to Tommy. We're going to return on Christmas Eve with another Pro Football Today with the Packers take on the Saints. God, 75 minutes of Spencer Rattler talk.
Uncle Stevie.
Lines to the best betting insights. We've got everything you need to crank up the excitement this season. We can't promise there won't be a little yelling.
Played a decent schedule. They have maybe 500.
They just ruined my day.
But we can guarantee a whole lot of fun. Merry Christmas from all of us at SportsGrid.
You do not seem to be overly concerned about the Lions holding on to that 1 seed by the end of this season. Will Detroit have the NFC postseason run through the Motor City?
How many plays does the defense have to make in a shootout? They got to make 1 or 2 more plays than the other team. And if they can do that, then Detroit is very much alive in any game.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Those guys, those rookies, the Pacom Daddiers, the Jacob Toppins, right? The Tyler Koleks, those young kids. He wants to get them that check. It means a lot to Brunson. And honestly, folks, it's going to mean a lot to this New York Knicks franchise that's never been back to the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals since 1999.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.